Well, good evening, America. This is Q News Tonight, the world's first live daily gay evening news show. And it's 7 p.m. Wednesday, April 1st, 2020. Happy April Fool's Day. We queue up breaking Q News right at the top of the show to report, as I just referenced, April Fool's Day has been canceled due to COVID-19. We report tonight that at Q News Tonight and later at 8 o'clock at It's Happening Out, we were going to do a special segment on April Fools where we did the first LGBT live evening news show and do fake news stories. And we were going to do it as an April Fool's edition. It has been planned for a while, but we could not imagine COVID. And ultimately today, we made the decision to not continue with our plans for April Fool's Day because of what was going on in COVID. And we frankly didn't want to argue of whether we were allowed to make the joke and whether you thought the joke was funny. Guys, what do y'all think about April Fool's Day being canceled in America this year?
We've been talking about a lot of companies that have canceled whatever it was that they were going to do. I know one of the ones that I follow that does something that is April Fool's related every year is Nintendo. And this year they chose not to do something as well. But there is one group within it. It was a Flipnote, which is a game. And they had a false sense of what was going to be happening for April Fool's. And because something was leaked and it didn't actually happen, there was a lot of backlash. And I think the real story here is that people are so frustrated and wanted that sense of relief that sometimes comes from April Fool's, that when they didn't get it, they ended up being a little bit more pissed off than if they had just gotten it in the first place.
Yeah, it's kind of like damned if you do, damned if you don't.
It's a difficult situation for everyone right now.
Yeah, yeah.
I also think it's a good thing that we canceled the April Fools overall because anxieties are extremely high right now. Everyone's nerves are fried and we are all on edge. If somebody coughs, we freak out. If somebody gets too close, we freak out. And I don't think that we could be doing fake news very well at this moment. So I'm glad that we canceled April Fools.
Yeah, so we report at the top of the show on our breaking Q News, April Fool's Day is canceled. We've got to find over the course of a month, we know we're going to go through this for at least a month. I am going to be tethered to these two people for a month.
Oh, no.
If that isn't an April Fool's joke, I just don't know what is. So we've got to find a way to have some fun. So as we at Q News Tonight continue to report and stay on the air in reporting LGBT news in America and worldwide, we're also going to make a commitment in this coming month to make sure that we have more fun than ever. We're going to accomplish both. So, good evening again, America. It's 7 p.m. Wednesday, April 1st, 2020. It's time to queer up the news. We are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your stories tonight. Next on Q News Tonight. Tonight on the world's first live daily queer evening news show.
Tonight's news about the gay community and the news from an LGBTQ perspective. Are our gay stories important to you? In headlines, politics, entertainment, gay culture, travel, religion, and more. Reported by respected anchors.
Out of the closet and into the headlines on Q News Tonight. Welcome to Q News Tonight. We are live and unscripted, so anything can happen. Tonight we bring you the news of and a perspective from the LGBT community. I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson. Aaron Darr is taking a leave of absence from Q News during the coronavirus crisis because of specific medical needs he has discussed on Q News Tonight and as a guest host on It's Happening Out. We wish him to stay safe and look forward to Aaron's return when this crisis is ended. This, therefore, tonight is my co-guest anchor, Misty Eyes. Misty, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I am having a ball with this show.
Did you ever think that you would be doing LGBT news?
In a childhood fantasy, yes.
Okay, great. And of course, my stable or unstable anchor, Napoleon Plays. Welcome, Napoleon.
Thanks for having me here. It's been a rough day for everyone, I'm sure, but there's always time for a little bit more play and a little bit more instability, I guess, too, as we go about it.
Yeah, I have to say I'm very proud of this, is why I say it. I have opportunity to do lots of exercise. Napoleon and I walked 8.5 miles today. That's pretty awesome.
And I was running away the entire time.
Dude. All right, so let's cue up the news. During the COVID-19 crisis, we will bring you the day's bullet points on coronavirus. The most important news of the day that you may have missed. And so these are the bullet points of coronavirus for Wednesday, April 1st, 2020. Headline: Coronavirus's latest update. As of today, April 1st, 2020, we report tonight that the number of coronaviruses in the USA have exceeded 215,000, and the number of coronavirus deaths have reached almost 5,000. Headline in our bullet points of coronavirus for the day for April 1st. The White House projects a grim toll from coronavirus. The scientists leading the administration's fight estimated that the virus will kill between 100 and 240,000 Americans. New data suggests that as many as 25% of infected people may currently not even show symptoms in the coronavirus COVID-19. Headline today in our bullet points on coronavirus for April 1st. The president compares the effects of coronavirus to a world war. President Trump said today in one of his most sobering presentations at the White House briefing, he said, quote, "We're going through probably the worst thing the country's ever seen. We lose more here potentially than you would lose in world wars as a country." President Trump said at his daily White House coronavirus briefing that, quote, "This is going to be a very painful, very, very painful 2 weeks, but that Americans will soon start seeing some real light at the end of the tunnel. I want every American to be prepared for the hard days that lie ahead. We are going through a very tough few weeks," Mr. Trump said at the briefing, later raising his 2 weeks to 3. Striking, perhaps, is his most somber tone on the subject of coronavirus to date. Mr. Trump went on to say that the virus is, quote, "a great national trial unlike any we have ever faced before," and said it would require, quote, "the full absolute measure of our collective strength, love, and devotion in order to minimize the number of people infected." He finally concluded the presentation by saying, quote, "It's a matter of life and death, frankly." He said officially calling for another month of social distancing and offering a sober assessment of the pandemic's impact on the United States, and then finished by saying again, quote, "It's a matter of life and death." Headline tonight, April 1st, 2020, on our coronavirus headlines. Ignoring party lines, governors challenge Trump's assertions on the availability of emergency supplies. A chorus of governors today from across the political spectrum is publicly challenging the Trump administration's assertion that the United States is well-stocked and well-prepared to test people for COVID-19 and care for the sickest patients. In New York State, the center of the nation's outbreak with at least 1,550 deaths, Governor Andrew Cuomo said on Tuesday that the country's patchwork approach to the pandemic had made it harder to get desperately needed ventilators. Headline for April 1st, 2020 for our Corona update. Many of New York City's coronavirus patients we report tonight are young people. Once again, young people are being reminded that in the face of coronavirus, they are not invincible. New data from the New York City Health Department shows that people between the ages of 18 to 44 account now for over 40% of the city's confirmed coronavirus cases. And that is our headlines in Coronavirus Tonight. We also update you on our host with the Happening Out television network. Its Happening Out host, Ron Brunetsky, is hospitalized and continues to be in critical condition in ICU in hospital. Its Happening Out host and Happening.Fun anchor, Chef Josie, is in quarantine after testing positive for COVID-19, and all of our other host and production staff in South Florida have been tested negative. Tonight, the Top Chef and Top Chef All-Stars report continues in Chef Josie's report called Day 3, Chef Josie's Corona Diary. Watch this.
Hey guys, this is Chef Josie and this is day 3 of my Corona Diaries. I titled this one, The Truth. Listen guys, the truth is sharing is caring, okay? You know, I have a lot of people that I've been in contact with who've been calling me to check in on me and find out how I'm doing. And they tell me, you know, I think I have some symptoms, or I think I might have the coronavirus. How am I going to, how do I get tested? And well, hey, listen, don't share my information. I have a lot of people, don't tag me in posts online about you being positive. Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. Guys, collecting data and understanding the virus is what we're doing. It is our responsibility to be honest with each other. It's our responsibility to warn the people who are in our lives that we might be positive and that we might be in a contagious state. It's important for us to share this because it will save other people's lives. And the longer that we pretend or we don't, we choose to be disconnected from the truth, then the longer our businesses are closed down and the longer the potential for death sticks around and lingers. That being said, you know, fear is the enemy. That's what I'm saying. You know, we can't be afraid to be honest with each other. We cannot be afraid to have this virus. I mean, that's just a momentary experience, a momentary reaction. Fear is going to kill you before the virus, possibly. Guys, I hope that by sharing this, I'm helping you to understand why it's important for you to stay home. Just stay home. Don't be afraid to stay home. Stay home and enjoy the time with your family.
Well, I'm loving this segment that is being done at Q News Tonight, Chef Josie's Corona Diary, and she's going to be doing this every day, keeping us informed of what life with COVID-19, for somebody as notable as Josie, what life is. What do y'all think about what you've just watched here?
I think it's beautiful. Everyone in this room was put at risk of COVID-19, which is why we got tested. And unfortunately, one of our own got positive and tested positive, and I think it's scary but realistic and hopeful to watch daily their struggle. I think it's also very important what she said when she said that the stigma. She was talking about the stigma, and some of her friends are like, please don't mention me on Facebook that I asked you about being positive. This reminds me so much about people that are HIV positive and scared to admit it. I mean, that's easy for me to say HIV negative. However, there's stigma surrounding our community in many levels. I don't want you to know I'm this. I don't want you to know I like that. Oh my God, I don't want you to know I like My Little Pony. But COVID-19 is the world. I mean, whatever. There's lots of closets people hide in. And COVID-19 is another one. And unfortunately, there are stigma. But I agree with her. Knowledge is power. And letting people know around you that there's a chance, or you came in contact, or you're scared, it's human. Be a human in this pandemic.
Yeah, you mentioned the idea of stigma, and I think that's the responsibility that everyone has, however they test, even if they don't test. Right now, you can help people that you know that are going through something, which is everyone, if it relates to COVID right now, to know that there is no stigma associated with this. Getting the information out there I'm so happy to see Josie say this. It was a breath of fresh air amidst everything that's going on, because we have to stay positive for each other, and we do have to get that information out there. We have to make sure that we're doing everything we can as individuals, whether that be self-isolate or that be getting the information to the government, so that we can try to find that cure that is coming and that we'll eventually get, but only if we can actually report honestly.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting, Josie's observation and then both of your observations. Josie basically calls us out to say we shouldn't be living in a closet, and that's why truth is important. And interesting, Napoleon is the youngest person associated with the cast of Q News Tonight and reporting tonight. And I've gone through, I mean, in fairness, over the last week and a half, Napoleon has expressed a tremendous amount of fear, tremendous amount of fear. And that is completely understandable. I love this diary that Chef Josie is doing, because it gives us this opportunity to have the conversation. Are we scared? Yes, we're scared. Are we fearful? Yes, we're fearful.
Very much.
But we didn't bring COVID on ourselves. We didn't cause it. It's not a gay thing. It's not an American thing. It's a world thing. And so therefore, we all should face it together, and there should be no stigma, and we should literally come out of the closet, and we should try to fight our fear. We queue up a Vote 2020 tonight by reporting that Donald Trump's approval ratings, believe it or not, are higher than ever amid COVID-19 scare. We've prepared a package on this. Watch this.
Some of those numbers. So as it stands right now, the approval rating for President Trump is 45.5%. Now, just before we had our first coronavirus case here in the United States, his approval rating was 42.3%. Now, I want to mention here that this is actually one of the highest approval ratings that he's had since he took office. I went all the way back to see his approval rating back in January of 2017. So right after he started off, got into office. His approval rating then quickly spiked at the beginning up until around 47%, and it has trended downward steadily ever since then. So what we're seeing, this pop, seems to be off of the back of his response to coronavirus.
Sometimes it seems like the bad news just keeps on coming. Right here, it's not uncommon to have a president have a surge in polls after a crisis or during a crisis. In fact, that's common as it relates to 9/11, as it relates to just about any occurrence in our nation's history. There's always a surge in the president's polling around a time of crisis, because people are confused and have a lot of emotions, and they're looking to what they believe are their leaders to help them. But of course, we've watched Trump and reported on Trump for the last several months, and he has stated there have been 200,000 deaths, there's 30% unemployment, the stock market is crashed, the government is responding slowly, they're lying to us, he's attacking governors, yet his approval rating is still now at 49%. With Republicans, that has been about flat, it's been even. But among independent voters, that has gone up by 8%, and in Democratic voters, it's gone up by 6%, which means that it's not the Republicans that are seeing more of a trend toward Trump right now. A lot of people that fall into that spectrum, the independent, the Democrats, are flooded with Trump right now, people that are not generally paying attention to the news. And so while this may sway either way, as it will quickly do in crisis, as we've seen historically, right now the nation is still divided, but our tendency is to go toward Trump. And we see that a lot in the LGBT community too, who frequently will look away and be very squirrely with how they're voting. And we're seeing that with voters here as well.
You know, we have an election on November 3rd, with COVID or without COVID. We have an election of a new president of the United States. We were talking about this in this story, of Napoleon's story, before we went on the air. This poll, and this report at Yahoo reminds me of the movie Backdraft. If you haven't seen that movie, in the movie Backdraft, the villain is the fireman, the fire chief. And he sets the fires, knowing where the fires are going to be the hero to put the fires out. And Backdraft is President Donald Trump. He's done so little on ignoring this, and now he's going to be the hero of saving us from coronavirus? No, I don't think so.
I agree with you, Al. I think in the very beginning of this pandemic, he was in denial. And unfortunately, many of our religious leaders followed suit. And yesterday we reported some of them had passed because they didn't believe the coronavirus was real, and it was the conspiracy theorist. But it is real. And I think a lot of the voters, or the people being polled, are now suddenly like, oh, our savior's here. He's willing to give us $1,200. We should vote for him. He's here to save the day. And I do think that he is sweeping in the last moment to be like, hey, trust me, I've got you. Where in the beginning, I think our country's in trauma because he ignored it in the beginning.
Well, for sure, the LGBT community is going to watch this closely.
That's true, and there's a lot of time for this opinion to sway back among the LGBT community as well, like you said. And we want to ask you, as you vote on November this year, are LGBT voices important to you? Can the news of the world have a gay community perspective? If you, like us, think the answer is a resounding yes, then like and subscribe to Q News Tonight on YouTube and on Facebook. Do our gay cultural stories impact you, your friends, and your family? Then start a watch party. Get your circle involved as it supports the entirety of our whole gay community.
We continue by queuing up the USA tonight and report that Florida Governor DeSantis has shut down the entire state, finally, and maybe not even completely. But we've prepared a package. Watch this.
In Florida, we did the 15 days to stop the spread. I mean, I think it's clear that that represents effectively a national pause. We've seen some of the job losses. We've seen some of the economic problems that have happened as a result of this. We're going to be in this for another 30 days, I think, based off that. And that's just the reality that we find ourselves in. And so given those circumstances and given the unique situation in Florida, I'm going to be doing an executive order today directing all Floridians to limit movements and personal interactions outside the home to only those necessary to obtain or provide essential services or conduct essential activities.
Before Misty reports this story, let me summarize what has happened here in Florida. Many people are concerned that Florida is going to become the epicenter in the world of coronavirus, moving from New York. This morning on the Today Show, Savannah Guthrie did a live interview with Dr. Fauci. And the doctor was interviewed, and Savannah Guthrie specifically read the words that Governor DeSantis of Florida said on why he had not done a statewide, followed most other governors in following a shutdown protocol in the state, and specifically said that the federal government had not given direction. Dr. Fauci picked up the CDC guidelines and said this guideline created at the CDC is designed for America, which recommends a national shutdown of the entire country and shuttering in place, and used that as a direct answer to the governor of Florida and why he was not responding to it. Within 1 hour, this press conference was held, and the Florida governor then indicated that he would follow those directions because he had been called out under pressure by one of the leading voices in the White House's position. So Misty, tell us a little more about what's going on here.
Well, this story reminds me a lot of the pitting your mother against your father fight that many children have had. And we are fortunate that he has shut down the state of Florida as of today. But the reason he delayed it so long is he officially said that he had no plans of issuing a statewide stay-at-home order, partially because he says he hasn't been told to do so by the White House. And on last Friday, Donald Trump did say that he didn't want to be the bad parent either. He's not going to do a national order and is leaving it up to each state to do so themselves. Again, reminding me of the mom versus dad. Mom, can I go to my friend's house? Mom says, it's up to your father. Dad, can I go to my friend's house? It's up to your mother. Thus, what does the kid do? Go to the friend's house. And that is where we are living right now until this order does get enforced. But on a positive note, Governor DeSantis has been limiting travel into the entire state of Florida for some time now, and that is a good thing.
A really good example of the lack of inaction of the governor of Florida is what is going on here in South Florida. 2 Holland America ships are on the verge of, in an emergency situation, trying to dock in Fort Lauderdale. Full ships, and there is quite a controversy on whether they can dock. Tomorrow, the Broward County mayor will make a decision of whether the 2 ships can dock at Port Everglades in Fort Lauderdale. This should be a decision that is made by the governor of Florida, but he is inactive and inconsistent in terms of how we are operating in Florida. Beaches have been closed here in South Florida for now almost 2 weeks. but that is because of our mayors, like who you're getting ready to hear from, Dean Trentalis of Fort Lauderdale, whereas beaches in Daytona Beach or in Jacksonville still have had openings in the last 4 and 5 days, over the weekend even, because there's not been statewide action. To tell you a little about this story of the cruise ships, we prepared a package of Dean Trentalis talking about their imminent arrival. Watch this.
You do not want these ships to dock in Port Everglades. Why?
Good morning, and thank you for having me on your show this morning. We are not against the ships docking in our community. The problem is that no protocol has been established yet to allow these folks to come off the ship. We are in the midst of a humanitarian crisis here. No one denies that. And John, let's face it, we have sick people there and we have well people. But we have to be able to allow people to step off the ship and to be able to return to their families, whether they be in Florida, anywhere in this country, or anywhere around the world. But we cannot do it so willy-nilly. We have to be sure that we're taking precautions. I've been listening to your show this morning and looking at the pervasiveness of this contagion. And there can be no missteps in this process.
Right.
Now, you may know, so in Oakland, the Port of Oakland, California, what did they do? They systematically removed people from the ships, and those people that were not symptomatic, they were quarantined for 14 days. Those that were symptomatic or suffering from an illness, they were directly given medical assistance. That's what we want here in Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah.
By the way, you are watching Q News tonight, and we are part of the Happening Out television network. We are the Daily News. We are also part of the most popular live gay TV show in the world, which happens every Wednesday night at 8 p.m. Tune in tonight at 8 p.m. because I will also be on that show tonight as a special guest for It's Happening Out. It's Happening Out is a talk show like television's The View, with a whole lot of gay people.
Yeah, I continue to try to convince Misty she's part of the community.
I am. I'm forever. I do say that I'm a straight woman. I'm not a lesbian. I have nothing against lesbianism. I did try it once in college, but I'm not a lesbian. I am a straight woman. However, I'm forever part of the LGBT community. As a Christian white woman, I'm still a T.
Right. All right. We continue to queue up the USA by reporting that the first quarter in 2020 is the worst in America's stock market history. We've prepared information on it. Watch this.
Well, the first quarter of 2020 ended today, and it was the worst first quarter ever on the Dow. MSNBC host David Gura is with me now to run through the day on Wall Street. And David, for starters, I will apologize for my bookshelves. They don't nearly stand up to the ones you've been showing us over the past couple of weeks. And next to the markets, they were, sorry, my friend, I'm doing the best I can. The markets were up this morning, then they took a turn for the worse this afternoon. What pushed them lower?
And what we've seen in these recent weeks is so much volatility, so many dips and so many rises as well. It's just funny, again, how we look at this. But, I think where the biggest uncertainty lies is in certain sectors of the economy right now. Oil prices are still just dramatically low.
Now, the U.S. market is determined, or the stock market is shown through three main indices, which are the S&P, the Dow, and the NASDAQ, which take into account the top 500, the top 30, and then the common stocks of about 3,000 U.S. companies, respectively. And just as if it were any better, this has been the worst first quarter in the 124-year Dow history. It's been the worst quarterly loss since 1987, and it's the worst since 2008. The first time since 2008 that the S&P has been down in the first month of each quarter in over 12 years. This has happened only 7 times in its 63-year index. And so, in short, stocks are doing really badly. Now, traditionally, that means that it's coming to an upswing, but this is not something that we've seen since potentially the Spanish flu, and we really don't have much of an indication of what our economy is going to be like in a week, a month, or a year.
The news on our economy and the stock market is actually going to worsen also because the stimulus package is going to kick in now. but the reporting is absolutely horrendous in terms of what's happening for small business association loans, the individual platforms that are not designed for the amount of transaction that is taking place on the platforms, and also unemployment applications. Estimates by the federal government are that we're going to have a 30% unemployment rate, even with the additional stimulus package, which was very desirable. The ability to get on to file your unemployment, the reporting of what is happening is horrendous, and we will continue to do our reporting on that tonight. We're going to move into a conversation about the big finish. And because of our timing situation, we're going to move to the big finish. We want to remind you that at 8 o'clock tonight, it's happening out, our talk show. We have so many things we're going to talk about tonight, and we hope you join us. Next, we do have, to end the show, the big finish. There are many stories today that we only want to mention. Let's see if Misty and Napoleon and I can entertain each other as we have a lightning round on the LGBT news of the day and news with an LGBT perspective. So here we go. Q News tonight's The Big Finish. First story, The Nanny. The series from the 1990s, the original cast is going to reunite for a virtual table read of the pilot episode.
This is the first good news that I feel like I've heard in months. I was just beaming with joy, as you can see on my face, just even hearing the words. And when everyone's gone, I know that we have a little challenge that hopefully we're going to get into with The Nanny.
I don't know. I'm personally ecstatic. There's a little queer person growing up. I definitely tuned into The Nanny. Oh, Mr. Sheffield. See, I can't even do it, but I do love her.
Finally, one of us decided to accept that challenge. I am not. I'm going to leave it just at that. Congratulations.
I'll go for it. Oh, Mr. Sheffield. Yeah, I'm a Jew. I feel like I should be better at it than that.
Well, my only observation of The Nanny is while we're going to go back to the 90s, can we please get Bill back into office? Please, could we get him back into office? Thousands of people have signed a petition to stop an anti-trans group, LGBT Alliance, receiving charitable status. This is an organization that does not support, a gay organization that does not support the T in our identification.
A lot of people say that being trans, I am not, but have said to me that being trans is like a second coming out. And apparently the third coming out is coming directly out of the LGBT community entirely.
That's an interesting spin. Unfortunately, this does not shock me or surprise me. For decades, when we're fighting for gay rights, a lot of times people will say, if you take the T out, this law will be passed. If you take the T out, this bill will be passed. If you take the T out, but we are an LGBTQ++ community, and we should stand together.
It is truly the ignorant among the gay, lesbian, and bisexual community that do not understand how much the transgender community is owed. It's called Stonewall. Along with drag queens, the trans community were the leaders of our gay revolution. And I just point out to all of these ignorant people in our community, in the 1930s, Nazi Germany, Aryan white people thought that Jews and gay people could be forgotten. It destroyed their communities, it destroyed their country, and it led to 30 million people dead. The LGBT community is better than that. But unfortunately, we're going to have some tremendous event before you're reminded why T is important. A New York husband hid his coronavirus symptoms from a hospital so he could see his wife after she gave birth.
Former SNL writer John Mulaney had previously said that Donald Trump's being in office is sort of like a horse loose in a hospital because you never know what he's going to do. And I can't help but think of this metaphor with this husband that apparently cares so much about his child that he's willing to put everyone, including his child and recently birthed woman, husband. Oh, now I'm getting all out of that.
Partner.
Yes, thank you. Out of sorts with it. Like, how could you possibly do that? That's just so ignorant to do that and to be harmful to that many people.
Yes, I agree with you. Putting your wife in jeopardy just so you can see the baby, I mean, that's very irresponsible. Shame on you.
When I think about him going to the hospital in these circumstances, I guess that makes it twice that the husband came too early. Companies making medical supplies say feds aren't taking charge.
Back to SNL again. I think of Alec Baldwin, who had his resurgence because of being Donald Trump on SNL. And he was also the head of GM in 30 Rock. And I can't help but think that he would be a better leader in this time, making better decisions than our current president.
I don't have one on this. Next.
I would have thought that the Fed was a dominant, given all of the big talk. But I guess it's just a little submissive, waiting to be told what to do by Daddy Russia. Oh, submissive the Donald and Daddy Putin. Happy 47th birthday to Rachel Maddow.
And coming up next, it's Wolf Blitzer's birthday.
Speaking of lesbians in college, she stuck to it.
A true LGBT and national treasure. We should keep her in bubble wrap so she is safe from all of this. Seriously, the single greatest voice to explain the crazy times we are living in. Happy birthday, Rachel Maddow. On this day in 2001, the Netherlands became the first country to make same-sex marriage legal.
Now on my bucket list to go and visit.
Yeah, once again, I feel badly that I didn't decide to nest there during this crisis instead of here. Because we'd have health care.
Social isolation, too. Who would have thought the little Dutch boys who put fingers in the dikes would lead the world in understanding equality, begins in dignity, human family rights, and marriage. I really like the Dutch attitude. Been there many times. I love the Dutch attitude on sexual freedom, Amsterdam's red light district, their amazing coffee shops, which, by the way, are really drug dens, and I love their tulips. And come to think of it, I do really love the Dutch boys, too. Well, that's it in today's news for the LGBT community on the world's first daily gay evening news show. Remember, if it's important to the LGBTQ community, it's important to Q News Tonight. But you must help us. Click subscribe on YouTube and share this news with your friends. We are literally out of the closet and into the headlines. This is the only source of live LGBTQ news in the entire world. Your community needs your support. And remember, in this time of Corona and COVID-19 and these horrible headlines, you are not alone. We will get through this crisis. We are here with you. And this is Q News Tonight. So we'll see you tomorrow night at 7.